Good morning, everyone. Justin Turner. I'm back again to talk to you about some of my other ideas to do with your business reboot during COVID-19. I run a small accountancy business up in Newcastle upon Tyne, and today we're going to cover off part two, which is idea generation and innovation for your business. So let's get started. So remember lean methodologies from my last video? Well, if you haven't watched my last video, here's a quick recap. So the idea of lean methodology is that we want to get from A to B as quickly as possible. In order to do that, we'd love a supercar. Now, we can't afford a supercar, so how do we actually get from A to B? Well, actually, if we've got a bicycle available, it does the same job and it still gets us from A to B, no problems at all. So we've got to just think a little bit about how quickly we can adapt and change things within our business. It doesn't have to be absolute perfection in order to get there, but actually we don't need the complete finished solution. And actually sometimes when we've got the complete finished solution, like in my example of the supercar, actually, if you're delivering fruit and vegetables to your client and you need to go from A to B, a supercar is completely and utterly overkill. It's completely not suitable for purpose. So we've got the perfect solution, but it's not actually fit for purpose. So just looking at lean methodologies a little bit further, again, what I've already said is forget perfection, but start sooner. Remember, lean methodology isn't about doing it cheap. It's about doing it well. So the parts of it you're going to do those bits well, but get there really, really quickly. Now, it's all about this. This flowchart explains it really well, and it's a bit of, again, a recap from my last video. We're going to build something, we're going to measure it, and we're going to learn it. What we're going to build is a product. It could be a service. It doesn't have to be a product. In order to measure it, we need to get rapid customer feedback, and we're going to learn from it, and that customer feedback and the sales ultimately are going to tell us whether that idea is a success or a failure. Now, I'm going to give you some tools and tips today about how you actually generate some ideas and actually work those through. It's kind of a systematic process in order for you to work out whether they're going to be viable business ideas so you're not wasting your time. So I've got 5 quick ideas to give you an example of idea generation. These might not work. They're just some things that I rapidly came up with last night as I wrote up this PowerPoint presentation. So just bear with me. I've got an idea for a restaurant, estate agent, therapy business, gym, and a holiday let business. So what about these ideas that I've got? Well, actually, during COVID-19, we've got this lockdown period at the moment. So restaurants, well, you could change your business to a recipe box delivery service. I identified in my last presentation, box services are absolutely booming, recruiting new members of staff. So this could be a really good way to adapt your business. We've got a therapy business. Well, I've actually seen already this happening. Is physiotherapists offering online appointments. I'm quite a keen runner, and I've been out running throughout this period just to keep fit. And you can easily pick up an injury, so actually being able to have a consultation with the physio would actually work quite well. I would still quite happily pay for that service if I injured myself. I'm sure a physiotherapist, being very, very experienced, could actually talk you through things, get you to push your own muscle to see where it was hurting, and actually set you some exercises and have some feel about how you can help, how they can help you. What about a gym? Here's an idea I came up. I've no idea whether this would work, but you could rent out the equipment that you've got in your place at the moment. You could partner up with a delivery company, get it into people's homes, and they pay you a monthly fee for the rental of that equipment. It must be sat, not being used at the moment. I think obviously you'd have to be very careful about disinfecting that equipment and the way in which you delivered it as well. It needs a bit of careful thought. What about holiday lets? Well, I had this idea is what about housing people who are most at risk of the COVID-19 virus as well? You could offer your business up for people who maybe were in a shared housing environment with other family members, and this person has fallen into the at-risk category, and maybe they could be put into a separate holiday let temporarily. Just an idea. Estate agents, well, actually I came up with this idea about promoting rental management for those vulnerable who can't actually leave their homes at the moment. They might have a property portfolio that they're letting out to tenants. And actually you could have a little promotion as an estate agent in order to actually help those people. I think with all ideas though, you have to be actually free and willing and understand the situation someone's going. If you're offering help, it should be really truly given to somebody. It shouldn't just be for the fact you're trying to grow your business. You should really believe in what you're going to do as well. More on that later. And the other final idea is, you might not be in any of these industries, but actually could you become an expert in your area and write a book about it? You've got time on your hands. It could be an ebook just distributed amongst your clients, or it could be something that you're looking to get published as well. So idea generation, it's actually easy. Fundamentally, it is actually easy. The problem comes is how do we actually determine if an idea is going to work? And that comes down to a process called innovation. Now, innovation, you say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not inventing anything, I'm not innovating anything. Well, actually, there's a huge amount of innovation, and I've pulled up this 4Ps model. This isn't to be confused with the 4Ps marketing model. And innovation is far more than just inventing. And on this little model I've got here today, is actually, I'm going to start to the right there with the product and service. Well, fundamentally, you can innovate your product or service. The position is at the bottom there. Position in the marketplace can be innovated. You can reposition your business. I've got some good examples of that as well. Process. Actually, process is something that is happening all the time in your business. A lot of small business owners aren't that rigid when it comes to process, and they don't have a very rigid process they follow. It's a bit more ad hoc. Well, actually developing a process that everyone sticks to, it can actually revolutionize your business, and it's part of innovation. And right at the top of that model, we've got this paradigm. And what on earth does that mean, Justin? Well, it's the overall business model of the business. Within that circle, we've obviously got these two words here all the way through on those arrows, which are saying incremental and radical. And innovation can be both incremental and radical. And what does that mean? Well, very, very simply, if I've got a biro pen, actually putting a lid on that biro pen with a little clip so it can attach to a notebook, or putting it into a nicer case, that's incremental changes to whatever part of the business. It could be, in this case, the product. Actually, a radical change is a bit like most of us have got Dyson vacuum cleaners in our home, or iPads. When they were first released, they were real radical innovations. Incremental innovations don't take very long to change within your business, whereas radical innovations actually take a huge amount of time and resources, and potentially research and development, in order to make them truly groundbreaking and actually change the marketplace. Let's have a look at a couple of these examples in a bit more detail. Product and service start with. How do we actually innovate a product or service? Well, what you need to do is think about how we can make it better. And I've just picked really two very simple ideas for you this morning. Is we had cars with brakes, they worked okay, and someone came along with the idea of ABS, anti-lock braking systems. It actually meant cars could stop very, very quickly by the brakes reacting in a different way, and it was, in some respects, it's controlled by a computer system. My car has even got one of these collision avoidance systems, so if it doesn't like how I'm actually braking, it takes over. That's innovating a product or service. Now, we've also got an example there where I'm looking at putting something that you've been doing on paper and turning it into a digital format. The reason I've picked that out today is because it's really relevant in terms of the COVID-19 problem we've got at the moment, is that a lot of traditional businesses, we can't deal with people face to face anymore. So is there a way that we can turn that into a digital mechanism? That's a big change to your product or service. What about positioning in the marketplace? This is a very famous toy. I don't know whether anyone recognises it, but it's made by Lego. And this was where Lego started. They started making wooden ducks. And you can see how Lego have massively changed their position in the marketplace. They've gone from selling wooden toys into plastic bricks that you can make into all sorts of things. And actually not just stopping there, Lego's products have evolved so rapidly that we're seeing things like Lego architecture that are being used in businesses for businesses to make prototypes. We see them being used in business for team building, and we're covering a huge age range of children as well. We've got right from Duplo age, very, very small children being able to play with Lego and access that, much bigger blocks, no danger of choking. We've also got partnerships going on with Lego, building up relationships with Star Wars, for example, Harry Potter. My children are particularly into Ninjago. They love the Ninjago Lego. But it's all about positioning your product or service in the marketplace. And Levi's, I think Levi's are a great example of positioning in the marketplace. Levi's traditionally were the workwear company for clothing. That's where you went to if you needed workwear. And actually they repositioned, and you can look at their brand in particular and how their brand has adapted over the years. And they've moved away from that workwear feel into a trendy clothing brand. They've got trendy shops on the high street. Now, positioning is going to be great for your business, and you need to think about where you are positioning yourself at the moment. My business, I have a very, very clear position within the marketplace. I know what I don't want, and I know what I do want. I know exactly which area of the market that I'm playing in. And it's a good idea for you to work that out for yourself. Those are two, I know, very big companies, but the principles still apply. It's actually writing down and deciding what position in the market, especially if you're coming up with a new idea, especially if you're innovating. And this is what it's all about, innovation. So positioning that new product or service that you're looking to develop is understanding where it sits in the marketplace. Fundamentally, changing your position in the marketplace will normally affect your overall business model. Let's look at process for a second. Actually, I picked out this example, and it's a wonderful example. Surgical safety checklist drops death and complications by more than 1/3. Now that's an amazing headline to be able to do it. Nothing really changed within operating systems to do with this, and it's a really well shared example of how processes and checklists can work really well in business. And no one's telling the surgeon how to do the surgery, because that's what their medical training is all about. But the checklist is making sure that everything is being done in the right order, making sure that everything has been done correctly as well. And actually, I've just put an example of a surgical checklist. I use all sorts of checklists within my business for different things. When we take on a new client, depending on what type of client, we follow a checklist. We make sure that we don't miss any of the key information. And those checklists are changing all of the time. When we start working with a client as well, let's say we're doing a set of accounts for them, we work with a very rigid checklist. And even before we go into the accounts production stage, we have a checklist for that as well. We have lots and lots of checklists. And why do I do it? It's because I've innovated my process, and I have a very, very rigid process by which everyone understands within my team how we actually follow that process. And it doesn't have to be checklists, but what I'm asking you to do is to look at the process and how you're delivering your service and consider it when you're coming up with new ideas, because it is incredibly important. So what about the model? Well, I picked out this example this morning, which was Nintendo. And Nintendo completely and utterly changed their business from a playing card company to a computer games company. Okay, that's a bit, stark in terms of the big change, and it's a huge company as well. We're talking about small business this morning. But it's still possible for you to change your business into something else. There's no reason why you can't do it. Just because you were selling playing cards doesn't mean you can't sell computer games. It's been seen many times over the years how businesses can adapt and change their business model into new and different things. And we see it all the time. My children like a particular brand of yogurt, and as I understand, it was actually a collaboration between dairy farmers to create it. So obviously the milk market was falling, and actually they decided to develop a new product or service. Actually, if you go through this model process, this 4Ps model that I showed you earlier on, Actually, all of those points need to be considered before you come up with a new idea for your business. So you could be implementing a new system, and that's the final example I've just put here. A new system to make you more efficient and actually potentially change the way in which you're working. We're all using new different working styles at the moment. I took on a new client yesterday through a video conference, and actually it worked just as well as a normal face-to-face consultation. The connection was good, which was in our favour. So you can see how your business model can adapt and change just by trying out new things as well. And that's where lean methodologies are really, really good in all of this as well, because we can rapidly come up with something that's maybe not perfect. It's good, but it's not finalised, and we'd like to add all these other bells and whistles onto it, but we haven't got the time. But we can get it to market, we can measure, and we can determine whether it's going to be a success or failure. Talking about success and failure, here is a really good example I wanted to get you thinking about. Who recognises that keyboard? It's actually called a Dvorak keyboard, and it's not a QWERTY keyboard. So when you look at it a bit more closely, and it's a wonderful idea. So 80% of the most commonly used keys are on the home row, and that's the middle row of the keyboard there, along from the caps lock. And it makes perfect sense, but 80% of those things are there. The problem you've got with something like a big change like this is that the QWERTY keyboard has been around for a long, long time. And actually QWERTY was originally invented to stop keyboard jams on traditional typewriters with moving parts. But fundamentally, typists and secretaries have been taught to teach touch type, I should say, and actually it's a long learning process for them to change and move into something else like a Dvorak keyboard. It would take 2 to 3 weeks. So while a lot of people will acknowledge that potentially Dvorak keyboards would be faster, well actually in reality that they're probably the practical ability for someone to change is actually, it's a huge barrier for them to enter the market. Actually, from Post-it notes, my other example, Post-it notes are a huge success. Now, what I'll do after this video is I'll share 2 YouTube links with you for the Dvorak keyboard and Post-it notes, and you can actually see the journey that these 2 ideas went along. Post-it notes, actually, really interestingly, it took a long time from the invention of the glue, believe it or not. It was actually the chap who invented the glue. He was looking for a super glue, and the glue just wouldn't set. But it was a long time after that before he started using this glue. He put it on a piece of paper with a little note on a document, sent it to a colleague, and his colleague sent it back to him saying, "This is a good idea." And they trialled it internally within 3M, which is the company who pioneered Post-it notes, and it was a huge success. And then they trialled it in a small area of the United States by giving away free samples to see how it would start to be what the uptake would be like. So you can sort of see the 2 different, it's to do with barriers of entry. How easy is it to understand something? And that brings me on to my next part of the presentation. I want you to write down, when you come up with an idea, what are the barriers and enablers that will stop you from doing this idea. Now, in the example of that Dvorak keyboard I showed you there, the barriers are huge from just the perspective of the learning time. We already have really competent people on QWERTY keyboard, and it would take a long time for people to regain the advantage because they would have been producing work at a much slower rate because they're learning something new. So here are just a couple of examples of what I'm talking about, and this is, I haven't picked an idea in particular. This is just an example of what a list could look like. So these examples I've got here in terms of barriers: we don't have the right people. Yeah, okay, that's a problem. There's a lot of people potentially going to be out of work or looking for different careers at the moment, so that could be an opportunity, how you can overcome it. It could be hard to measure the success of it. I think you need to think very carefully about how you can measure the success of it. You might need new technology in order to do it, so that could be a barrier as well. We just need to think about what the barriers are and if we can overcome them. And to be honest, if you can't overcome them, then you need to think hard about whether you want to proceed with the idea as well. What about enablers? Well, if it's easy to understand, and that's a big takeaway, people need it to be easy to understand. Can it be explained in small words, small sentences and things like that, so people understand it very quickly? There might be low competition, that could be an enabler. Actually having high competition, it could be, again, that could be potentially an enabler if you're coming up with something really revolutionary. You might have all of the resources you already need around you, and if it's going to be cheap and quick to get it to market, well, why don't you do it? That's a really strong enabler as well. Always consider the barriers to entering the market. And if there's actually research supporting your idea as well, that could be a really strong part of why you're moving into this market sector. You've seen a really good research report written by a university, for example, on a particular market sector that's either emerging or it's actually very large. You might think that actually that's where I want to sit myself, or it might even be finding a niche market. And a niche market is actually a really good place to test a new business as well, because it's fundamentally small, and if we're following the lean methodology as well, that product might not be perfect. So actually, if you can find a small niche market and promote it to that niche market, it gives you a really good test bed and where you can test your product and service out without it being catastrophic if it goes wrong at the same time, and it gives you time to recover, but it gives you time to measure, and it actually is very important. Also, if the product is hugely successful as well, operating in a niche market area means that you're not going to become overwhelmed potentially, and it is a manageable problem for you to have. I just want you to think about these key points. Can you explain your idea in small words, short sentences? Is it easy for you to gain credibility? Can you produce it consistently, whether it's a product or service? Can you answer questions about it quickly and easily? Is it novel? What sound and texture actually matter? If you've got a physical product, people will buy if it doesn't sound very good, or it feels a bit strange. It has a massive impact actually. Can you be aspirational about it? Is it easy to visualize how it's actually going to work? That's quite important as well. And does it have the right context and relevance? That's very important as well. Think about how you're going to communicate this out with your channel of marketing. Can we do this on a small scale, communicate it kind of on a one-on-one basis, and how would that work? Or are we going to try and use mass market? If we're going to use mass market channels like television, online advertising or anything like that, how are we going to track and measure that? It's very important. How easy is it to persuade someone to stop using one product and move on to your product? How long will it take for people to adopt the product in terms of time? Time is an important factor in innovation. We need to think how long something is going to take. What people have we got around in order to support us? They are key resources in all of this. And do think about your ethics as well. Ethics have an important part to play in all of this. So you need to just think, is it environmentally sustainable, for example? Or you might be coming up with a product or service just because you need to make some money, but you should always think, is it an ethically sensible product or service? Now, once you've been through that process, you've come up with some ideas, you might have used family and friends to help you come up with some ideas about what you could do. Work through that 4Ps innovation model. Make sure you considered the business model, the product, the service, the process through all of that. And then you've thought about kind of what the barriers and enablers are in terms of entering into the marketplace, and what the kind of the drawbacks, pros and cons, I suppose you could call them, are. Then I want you to map it all out. I really like business model canvas. Try and print it on an A3 if you can. If not, print it over 2 sides of A4 and just write down all of the key points, key partners, key activities, key resources, the value proposition, the customer relationship, the marketing channels you're going to use, how you're going to define your customer, which is called customer segmentation, what costs are involved, so what's your cost structure, and where is your revenue going to come from, which is the sales revenue basically. What are we aiming to sell it for? If you go on to strategizer.com, it's Strategizer, which is an American website, the company that's produced this business model canvas. I think you can get a copy of this. It's fairly easy to find. So go grab yourself a copy and map out your ideas in a structured way. COVID-19 isn't going to be over soon. I'm sorry to say that, but it's clear that it's not going to be over soon. I think even during this really restricted period that we're in at the moment, it's clear to see that it will take quite a long time even after that for things to return to normal. So start developing your ideas now. It's really, really important. This doesn't mean it's the end of the line. Just because you can't leave your home doesn't mean it's the end of the line. So start working on something. And I've got this again, which was in my last video, is fail to plan, plan to fail. I've given you some real tools there that you can use in order to actually assess whether an idea is going to work. Too many businesses don't assess ideas before they go out to the marketplace, and these are some really simple things that you can do. You don't need any sort of complicated spreadsheets or anything like that. It's just about sitting down with a piece of paper and doing some assessment, thinking, have I thought about the product and service and what my process is going to look like? Have I actually thought about what the barriers are going to be here and the enablers, and have I really thought about those as well? So try and just consider all of those points before you move forward. Don't forget about the key resources when you're thinking about ideas. You've got lots of resources around you all the time. You've got assets, you've got buildings, unused items, computer equipment that's sat doing nothing potentially. Your customer base, as I mentioned the other day, you could establish new co-ventures with other companies actually with that customer base, and actually creates a good tie-up with someone else to help kind of cross-promote each other. Your skills, you've got skills. Yes, you've got loads of skills that you can actually apply to things, and you can actually improve those skills as well. But they are great skills to have. Think about what skills you've got in your team as well. That's really, really important. And who in your family has got resources that you could use, and what skills have they got as well? So talk to your family members as well. We've got great communication nowadays with FaceTime video calls. Someone can turn the video on and show you things that are available to you. So start thinking about those now. And just remember, your idea doesn't need to be your current business either. I think that's an important thing. It's just people say, oh, that's all I know. Well, I don't think you just need to think in those terms. You can actually move into other things. As a business owner, you've got a whole range of skills that you can apply to most businesses in reality. So don't just limit yourself to doing what you're doing at the moment. So thanks for watching today's video, and my next video is I'm going to basically look at how to prepare your business for relaunch after COVID-19. I'm working really hard at the moment, actually trying to develop processes for my business. I'm looking at all sorts of different technologies. We've implemented a few new bits of technology in the business and kind of the way we're working. I'd want to share those as well. And in terms of some of the marketing techniques and some of the marketing preparation that we're doing as well for when our business actually returns a little bit more to normal. Don't forget to check out my last video as well. I've actually got a YouTube channel on, just search for Orange Umbrella and you should be able to find us. I'll upload all the videos there, so if you've subscribed to it, you'll obviously be notified as well. Okay, thanks for listening today, and I'll see you next time.